Welcome to Red Zone in the Lab. Today, we got a special guest, my man, your guy Nix, the host of the Pick Six podcast. He's going to join us today, and we're going to talk about our newly hired head coach, Dan Quinn, and also our newly hired defensive coordinator, Whitt Jr. And if there's anyone else that might come aboard, I know a lot of us Commander fans is looking down the road to look at Al Harris as also joining the staff. We're going to talk about some of their free agents that Dan Quinn might want to look at in free agency. So we got Nix to tell us about the character of this guy to see what's what on the other side of this. We're going to have our guy Nix.
Shout out Red Zone Lab Podcast.
Hey, what up, y'all? It's Benjamin St. Jude's, DB for the Washington Commanders. I want to give a big shout out to Red Zone and the Lab Podcast.
Welcome back to Red Zone in the Lab Podcast. I am Deuce. And today we have a special friend in the building, your guy Nix, the host of Pick Six Sports, Commanders Twitter, Dallas Cowboys content creator that's definitely in the mix. And no, he is not in the DMV. And I have to say that, Nix, because we treat DMV Cowboy fans a different way than we treat Cowboy fans outside of DMV, man. But
fair.
How you doing, Nix?
I've heard remnants of how it goes down over the DMV for a Cowboys Nation versus outside for sure. But y'all have Dan Quinn, so first and foremost, I'm leaving the hat backwards to y'all now. Let me get myself ready as we got a new defensive coordinator come in here. So I know for y'all, y'all are out with the O with the left hand up, it's head to the back and everything more for y'all.
That's right. How you doing today, man?
Man, I'm doing good, man. You know, sitting here watching us sift through, these available defensive coordinators we had, some of y'all are familiar with, and Ron Rivera in on Monday. Today they wraps up with Mike Zimmer. So they'll give you that announcement Thursday, Friday. So they can say that old news cycle during Super Bowl time or whatnot. Don't have anybody else scheduled. Joe Whitt obviously was on the schedule, but as I told everyone, Joe is number one for the Cowboys, right? That's who they really wanted, continuity, different things like that. He spent a lot of time up there in Green Bay, not only with Don Capers, but with Mike McCarthy. If you listen to Charles Woodson, he's a guy who will tell you Joe Whitt Jr. was very instrumental in him making that transition from quarterback to safety when he spent his time up there in Green Bay. But he finally gets to become a full-fledged defensive coordinator. Not really surprised that he followed Dan Quinn. Again, it's a question of stability. And this is kind of what I told, our fan base and what was going on because, you kind of have a 1-year prove-it deal here with McCarthy, right? As compared to you go follow Dan Quinn, you're there for 2-3 years at least, right? You have to go really, really bad for it not to be longer than 2 years. So stability won out. Salute to him. He's a phenomenal coach as well. On top of getting Dan Quinn, getting Joe Witt's huge, I think, for y'all. Yeah, man, no other interviews for us, so we just sit back and see which old timer we get.
Dan Quinn, man. Let's go back a few years. The big thing about Dan Quinn is his head coaching tenure is 2023, right? Like now that we have him, we're a part of that. So, when we see that, we got to put our guys up there to look to defend it, right? But one thing that I've heard about Dan Quinn is even after that loss, he reached out to the Golden State Warriors, and it was a baseball team that also lost a big lead in the championship, to see how did you recover? Like, how was you able to move forward from a loss like that? And that's where I want to start at with Dan Quinn. With you is his character, a person. Who is Dan Quinn?
Dan Quinn is from a coaching apparatus, right? He's a teacher. He's a player's type of coach, but he's hands on. He's on the field. He'll get in the trenches and mix it up with the guys in those routes and what they're doing, and not just telling them. Like, he's going to show them, hey, do it this way. Hey, come here, do it that way. That's why they're big. He's big on traits, right? You hear about Dan Quinn all the time. You have a certain matrix of measurements and different things that he wants, because he believes within his coaching and his teaching, he's going to be able to get you to fit the way he likes to do. But he's a guy's guy, though. At the end of the day, he's a guy's guy. He's not going to be a quote unquote general, right? A standoffish, do your job kind of guy. Like, he gets after it, but in the right ways. Like I said, he's a guy's guy, sneakerhead. That's going to resonate, because sometimes, we talk about when the coaches are older, how can you resonate with the younger players when you have that age gap and whatnot, right? And for him being a sneakerhead, right, the hat to the bag, so there's a way for him to automatically kind of connect with them away from the field, because who ain't a sneakerhead, right? Especially talk the young men and everything that's coming up. So players coach, he's more of a teacher, right, in that realm. He's very much a teacher. And Joe Whitt as well, that's his style too, teaching. Yeah, they're going to coach it up. Don't get it twisted. But in a lot of ways, a lot of coaches, I think, to me, miss the point of coaching ultimately is to teach and be able to get your point across and help these players get to the next level.
What's up, DT? DT said, DT. He said Nick's looking sad with a lot of emojis when you was talking about the defensive coordinator.
I mean, you just got.
What's up, Juan Dev? Utah in the building. He said, I feel like I should be taking notes. Yeah, definitely. We got to get a lot of information from Nick. So when he came over, when he was fired, you all were looking to add a defensive coach to that room.
We didn't fire him. We let him explore his options.
No. When he left Atlanta, when he was coming to Dallas,
I got you. Okay,
be the DC. Was he one of your options to take over the defense?
Yeah. For me, yeah, I had him. I think if I go back and look at my notes, I had him number 1 or number 2 is where I was at. Now, but to be honest, though, at the time frame, because of closer to the 28-3 and some of the things that went awry in Atlanta, it wasn't the most popular at times with Cowboys Nation before coming in here. But it was high on my list, because for me, a lot of times when you talk about head coaches, and again, he still got him to a Super Bowl, right? Let's be very clear.
Most definitely. And he wasn't
him to a Super Bowl.
And that, like, he wasn't supposed to, right? They wasn't supposed to be there. I think all three of them, the Saints and Tampa Bay, like they all got to the playoffs that year, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think from that division, if I'm not mistaken, or them.
I know them and the Saints were there for sure.
Yeah. So, and like they wasn't supposed to be there in a sense, right? Yeah.
So so it was different. Obviously, not only were we coming off of a bad year, that was the Dak injury, right? New first year McCarthy, COVID year. But not only was it a bad defense in Cowboys history, it was historically, NFL-wise, a very bad defense.
Yeah.
So Dan Quinn had to come in here, in dealing with those things, and rapidly turn this defense around, obviously.
Crazy. Yeah.
And I'm sure you got some other stuff about down the line here. I'll table that. But, I mean, what he brings to the table, what he likes to do, like you're getting Joe Whitt there. Like I said it out of the gate, y'all's rookie DB, y'all drafted Emmanuel Forbes. This is huge for him. For a guy like Davis as well, linebacker. I think this is huge for those integral parts of the young pieces of your defense, because they're not just going to point and click and, hey, this is our system, you got to do it. Okay, in my comparison, is kind of the perfect example, right? He was drafted as an off-ball linebacker. Injuries throughout his rookie year forced him to go play some edge. They kind of saw what he did at edge and said, okay, let's see what it is. And then that just kind of turned into where he's, playing 80% edge now. So, again, they want to put players in the right position to be able to use their gifts the best way they can to help the football team overall. But on top of that, you watch a Diggs from year 1 to year 2, year 3. You watch a guy like Deron Bland, rookie year to second year. Even a Jordan Lewis, who played phenomenal in the slot this year, of course, coming back from an injury. Those are just the things that you get, from Joe Whitt Jr. and from Dan Quinn.
How did he win over the fan base? Was it, when the season started, they saw how good the defense was, or What did he give you all during that off season and into training camp? Because I know it wasn't popular. I know y'all had a lot of 28-3 type conversations. So how did he win you all over? And what was his demeanor approaching understanding that that's going to be on his back as he coaches their defense?
Yeah, I mean, he owned it out of the gate, talking about it, and kind of like you look at the clip of him with the sit-down interview, coming into Washington. I mean, he's a stand-up guy, and he talks, and he doesn't hold any punches when he talks in those realms of what they're trying to do. The other side of that too is as he came in, had those conversations, then you started seeing some of the movement. You heard some of the players, and this is much different this way, and what they liked about him in those ways of the teaching and whatnot. Then once you got to camp, then the lights came on because all of a sudden you're seeing him on the field, moving around, moving these guys, and you see how the high energy from him and how he was in there mixing up with them. Man, I think just from a fan, take the players out of it, right? There's some up with the fan base to your question. I think every fan base, when they see a coach that's on the field with the players, getting in the mix and putting hands on players and showing and stuff, it makes you feel like they're involved and they know what they're doing, right? It's like, okay, he's committed to helping these guys get to the next level. And I just think a lot of it is he's a man of action, not a lot of words, or he'll do his pressures when he has to, but his actions, I think, is what won our fan base over. And I think for y'all too is y'all get to start really seeing him be involved with these players. I think a lot of y'all are on board with him. I know the initial reaction, because it wasn't maybe a Ben Johnson or whatnot, and there's maybe a little bit of a culture shock. It ended up being Dan Quinn, but it feels to me like there's a lot of the tide kind of turning in y'all's fan base. But I think for those that are still kind of like, I don't know, I think once they start seeing how he interacts and coaches and teaches on the field, I think there will be some movement for those people that are a little in doubt too.
Yeah, I mean, and of course, when people start coming in, it's the first thing they're thinking about. I don't know if you on your phone, but is Ron going to be in Dallas? That's what all of the. That's what all of the.
He was here Monday. He was here Monday in the interview. Zimmer today. I think it's going to be Zimmer, but I mean, look, let's have the unholy trinity. We got Kellen Moore in Philly. We got Quinn in Washington, and if we get Ron Rivera or Wink Martindale down here in Arlington, aka Dallas Cowboys, you never know, right? The unholy trinity of everybody just. You get a guy. We'll see how it works.
Yeah, I mean the Dan Quinn hiring, I think you're right. The initial reaction and it's kind of like it was like I always say, especially for our fan base, and I'm sure this applies to all fan bases in a sense, is it was like waking up too early, the alarm clock going off, or you waking up too early and you can't go back to bed, right? So you feel it for about 20, 30 minutes, and then an hour go by, you don't even really realize you woke up too early. So that's kind of like how it is now. Then after the press conference, a lot more people are on board from his press conference. But Dan Quinn, I heard a lot of things about him in Atlanta, the things that he used to do as far as community-wise, which is very important to me and a lot of us here, especially being in the city and knowing how these athletes and coaches and celebrities type affects the community. But I heard he's a runner. Is he's can you just tell us like anything about like some of the charity stuff he may do in the communities?
Yeah, I mean, and speaking of runner, like every game that he runs the bleachers.
Kayla, right?
Yeah, she got the
video.
See that?
You see that? Yeah, that was cool. Yeah.
But yeah, he does that everywhere. For us, he was always involved. But from the Cowboys as an organization, that's part of the branding. They always have players, coaches doing things and doing stuff like that. But he has his own set of charities that he likes to get into and be involved. And you hear former players, no matter what kind of all-star or not or whatever, he stays connected to their hip. And again, it goes back to the teacher side of that, right? Because teachers, all right, you get your group of kids, they move on. Some teachers, they just move on. But then some teachers always are checking up on you. Always, hey, even when you get out of class or out of school. And he's kind of built that way as a sense of community with former players, as a sense of where he's at, trying to make a difference. I think he understands the extra he can do. And again, that's just how he's built. Like I said, he's not a man of many words, but like you can take what he says to the bank, and he's a man of substance.
For sure. What's up, Caleb? Caleb in the building, Nix. Say back.
Yeah, I see him. Back Tad. Yeah, I see him.
Yeah, man. Telly gang. So that's very important to us. All right, he comes in, he makes a historic change to the defense. I mean, historic change to the defense.
Sure, absolutely.
Already end of the year, the rumors are, Mike McCarthy, if he ain't do this and that, the next guy gonna be Quinn. Quinn is a hot commodity in this offseason. He decides to go back. Why did he decide to go back as a D coordinator and withdraw his name from the head coaching search?
Yeah, I know. Like, can I go back to 2 years first?
Yeah.
Yep. Let me go to 2 years because also, right, he was hot after the first year.
Yeah, that's what I was talking to. The first year.
Oh,
I was referring to the first year. Yeah.
I mean, he went to Mike McCarthy because remember this is when Jerry Jones was mad, and Sean Payton was available, and all these things. And man, he asked Mike McCarthy and said, "Hey, man, you need me to get up out of here and move around." And McCarthy, these is McCarthy's words. Said, "Man, if it was 10 years ago, I'd tell you to leave. But what's best for the Dallas Cowboys is you being here." And once they had that conversation, whenever Quinn asked McCarthy, and McCarthy gave him his answer about that stuff, that's when Dan Quinn said, "All right, I'm shutting it down. I'm staying here. I ain't going anywhere." We fast forward to year 2, right? And that's where we're getting into Kellen Moore kind of getting out of here, which and the other side of that with Kellen Moore, people don't understand, it was McCarthy, it was Dan Quinn helping him with the interview process. Teachers teach, man. Coaches coach, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But it was him more than McCarthy that was like helping him year 1 and year 2 with the interview process and trying to set him up for, hey, this is how they're going to ask you, everything else. Just being the ultimate professional in that range. I think the right kind of jobs didn't land for him year 2, and I think that's why. Again, look, I got Diggs, I got Parsons. Maybe I'll sit here another year, and then I'll move on. Which ultimately, right, he did. I think it was a little bit different as to why he moved on. I think there was a sense of. It wasn't to me. I'll speak for me, and then I'll kind of give you the other side.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I knew it was time for Kellen to go. Like, I understood. I was like, okay, the time is up here. I don't know. I don't think you've reached the peak as a coach, but what you're doing here now is not working either way. Like, you need to go on and kind of, earn your chops in a little bit of the places. Young coordinator, but I think it was that time it happened. This time, I don't think it was, for me, it wasn't in that realm of, all right, DQ's got to go, ultimately. But I understood there was frustrations within the building. And down the stretch, a lot of stuff changed the last month and a half, I think, of the season. And I think, look, not that players disliked him or anything else, but I think there was things that were with the scheme that frustrated some people. Now, that's twofold just because personnel-wise, there were things there. Obviously, the way the linebacker core was ravaged with injuries, and we just never, kind of added to it. But I think there was some frustration at times of, look, these teams have kind of figured you out a little bit, and they're going 12 and 13 personnel, and you're basically staying at a nickel/dime, and this isn't working. And I think that frustrated some people within inside the building. But I mean, those are ebb and flows of coaching and seasons and stuff like that. It just happens. So I think in this stretch, I think Dan Quinn's like, look, if I'm going to get a job, it probably needs to be this year. I've been here for 3 years. We've done the 3 12-5s. This is our last year for McCarthy. No, and look, I can come back. We want to Super Bowl. Everybody, whatever. You just don't know, right? So I thought for him, it was just the right time for him. I don't know if it's the right time for the team or anything else, but I thought it was the right time for him because, again, as you're getting up in age and you're being interviewed a lot, eventually they stop calling, right? Yeah. They're like, okay, well, apparently you just want to be a coordinator, and that's kind of it. So I thought there was more of a chance of it happening this year, just how the way the season kind of broke down. And I thought for him, more so than that was, look, if I can land the right kind of spot, this is probably the most opportune time for me to do it. And you land with a team that has the number 2 overall pick, which should be able to allow you to get a young quarterback, right? And what y'all, 60 plus million in salary cap as well, too, if I'm not mistaken.
Around 83, including draft picks.
Right. So, I mean, it is with new management, new ownership, I should say, right? You go and get the GM, from San Francisco. So there was a lot of things that I think for Dan Quinn that it checked boxes for in Washington. If you look at the other jobs that he had previously interviewed for, I don't know if they looked as good as this one.
So, like, what can I say, Nix, to those that say that, well, he failed this past year against good teams?
Mm-hmm.
His defense was ran over in a lot of those games. You think about, especially the Packers game, right? Like a lot of
Sure.
people want to use one game to judge a whole
It's the last one.
2 years.
You know?
Yeah,
Well,
that's
they
the
say, you're as good as your last game.
yeah, as
Right?
good as your last game.
game.
That's right. And some other some other games through last year. I didn't really take a look into any of them yet. You know what I mean? Like I said, just got the hire, so haven't done a lot of research into them yet. But what can I say to those fans that's having doubts because of the inability to, I guess, step up in a sense against the better teams in the NFL?
Yeah, it was an interesting conundrum because prior to this season, right? I'll just go back to last year, for instance. Whether they were 500 above or below 500, the defense gave up an average of 20.1 to 20.4, something around there, less than 21 points, though, no matter good or bad, right? If you go back to the San Francisco game we lost in the division round last playoffs, right? What did we give up? 19? We gave up 19. Okay. The problem this year, though, on that hand, again, some of the frustration part that I talked about a second ago simply was, well, good team, or I should say teams under 500, sure, you're around 20 points again. Above 500, there was a huge gap, and it was 33 points. Yeah. And that's, where people kind of got frustrated. But now that's just a broad stroke. Let's tear into it, though. So Detroit, and y'all saw how Detroit ran the ball on San Francisco, right?
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? They didn't run the ball against us. That was late in the season. I mean, I was in the building for the game. Jimmy Jones was going to the Ring of Honor, and I had a lot of Lions fans around me.
Shout out to Knicks, man. They ain't started until Knicks started. When you start posting those, that Jimmy Johnson need to give you a special shout out, man.
Yeah, for real. But I mean, there was Lions fans around me midway through the second quarter. So my man, stop running the ball with Gibbs. And they were tapped out in the second quarter. You go down to the Miami game. They had some okay running, but it wasn't like huge gaps getting really just destroyed in the run game. Now, then there's the bookends, right? Then you have the bookends. That's the Buffalo game. I mean, where Josh Allen throws the ball only 15, 16 times and completely demolishing the run game. And then there's the Green Bay game, which it was have it your way, right? It really was.
Yeah, that's what Telly was just saying now.
Yeah,
like,
it
what
was have
happened
it
in the
your
Green
way
Bay
because they were able to run it, right? And then I don't know if it's because of the Gilly injury in Gilmore, because the shoulder and what he did the week before. Because we played a scheme that we didn't play all year long, and that was really puzzling to a lot of people, and offensively and defensively. But if you go back to the game, right? Okay, the first drive, the offsides, whatever. Okay, they get a touchdown. We get a stop though. Boom, we get a stop. Cool. And then there's the interception. You know what I'm saying? So it was just a lot of weird things that kind of broke down. The scheme didn't make a lot of sense to me. And that's the thing that puts a question mark on him, right? It was just about, because your last game was, what was the reasoning to go into? Because the offense, I can understand, right? They were 27th against the run and 9th against the pass. So you were trying to do some different things. Defensively, though, what we came to understand, even though he was hot down the stretch, right? Be clear about Love over there. He was hot down the stretch. But a lot of it was, if you get him off his mark from throwing the ball, okay, then those are the things that are advantageous to your defense playing well against them. But they just couldn't get home. And then, of course, he'll get crucified on the third. It was like the third drive, I think it was, or fourth drive. It was 3rd and 8 or whatever. They dropped Parsons back in coverage. Like, why would you do that? Okay, well, let me try to scheme something up. And look, somebody else go get something done. So
I mean, I've seen him cover the slats. Like I've seen him do that over the last couple of years. So I mean,
but the biggest thing in the run game, though, once again, they looked at Buffalo and said, okay, we can go 12-13 personnel. They're going to stay, because our nickel, right, is a big nickel anyways. And then you also have Marquise Bell, who's playing, linebacker, who's a safety. So you're kind of in a dime in a way. And they said, oh, well, they're going to stay in that, so we're just going to run and do those things. And once you get the running game going against us and with Dan Quinn is really where we would run into problems at times. Arizona game kind of comes to mind. They adjusted some things, right, and they were able to hold it more in the second half than they were in that first half, where they ran for like 130 or 40 yards in the first half, and then we kind of limited it down the second half. But those are the things that can get you in trouble. The things about Dan Quinn's scheme, for me, and I think at times he likes to stunt and twist the fronts a lot. And sometimes you get caught in run gaps. Sometimes you get caught in run gaps in that. And, especially whenever you're stunning, a 4-man front against 12 and 13 personnel, it can cause you some issues. So those are some of the quote-unquote bugaboos within this scheme that, just kind of came home to roost this year more so than it did in the first 2 years of his 3-year tenure here.
Yeah, so Teddy was asking who do you trust more as a coach, Quinn or Whitt? And that's where we're in. Before you answer that question, when it comes to Dan Quinn, right? Dan Quinn made the decision that Whitt is going to call the defense. What's your initial reaction to that?
So yeah, I mean, we had Whitt do that when Quinn had to miss a little time. It was like preseason. I think the thing about Whitt is you just look at his tenure in the NFL and the guys he's been around and the work that he's done. It's his time to be a defensive coordinator in general. It's just where it's at. Like I said,
and call plays too, because anybody can be a offensive defensive, but are they calling the plays?
Right. And he does great work with secondary. Again, that's from his time up there in Green Bay, his time in Dallas. Look, Al Harris gets a lot of love for the secondary, which he should. I'm not saying he shouldn't, but it's almost because it is Al Harris. He's on the sideline, not in the booth. He is animated and doing things. Joe Whitt has a lot to do with the secondary as well, too.
Hold on. So was Joe and Dan Quinn in the booth?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, correct. Okay. Interesting. So do you think Whitt is going to be in the booth with us?
I don't know, because obviously Quinn's going to be on the sidelines. So that's going to be interesting. I don't know. I feel like he will be in the booth. I think that's where he's going to be at. But again, we'll have to wait and see what kind of adjustments they want to make being in a new spot. But to me, if you ask me right now, I think Whitt will probably be in the booth. Is what I think. Which also kind of may lead, if you get Harris here, then you feel better about Harris being on the floor, him being in the booth, neither here nor there. But, here's the thing about trust as a coach. I had Quinn just specifically as a defensive coordinator, right? I didn't have him as a head coach. So I think that's the conundrum of that question is, you're getting Dan Quinn as a head coach and Whitt in a different position of what we had him in as far as a defensive coordinator. I buy into Joe Whitt as a DC. I wanted him to stay and be the guy here for sure. The interesting part, I think, for Quinn is, what did he learn from his time from Atlanta through Dallas to this new opportunity as a head coach? I think that's the big thing, getting to work with McCarthy, see how he operated, and how he changed. Look, he changed his defense. He tweaked his defense a lot more by the time he got to Dallas too. A lot of people go to Seattle and think about that. It was different in Atlanta, and then it was even different over here in Dallas as well. So Joe Whitt will be interesting to see, how much is it going to be Dan Quinn and what he worked with in Atlanta and Dallas? How much is he going to take from, say, Dom Capers that he worked with in Green Bay? And how does that look? Yeah, I think it's going to look the same on a lot of fronts, but every man is his own coach, right? So I think there's things that he probably wants to implement then maybe Dan Quinn didn't, but that's just because of their working relationship. And, of course, you probably know that your be your DC, so I think Quinn will let him get to do that. But Quinn's a leader of men, and that's what you want as your head coach, And I think you should feel comfortable with Whitt being your defensive coordinator.
Yeah, and Antoine, appreciate you for joining, bro. He said, they are one of the same. And Smoke wanted to know what's the temperature on Al Harris and Dallas media.
Yeah, I mean, people love Al Harris, rightfully so. I mean, Trayvon Diggs came out on Twitter and said Al Harris for defensive coordinator. But the one thing I will say, Al Harris, I think it was a week before Quinn got announced, said, "Hey, I don't care if he's in Alaska, Antarctica, the Blue Bomb, whatever. He calls me, I'm there." I think the thing now is, because he has to get a promotion to go. I don't know, there's some different things. Used to, you'd be like, "Oh, well, you were DB coach. All right, we're gonna make you passing game coordinator. All right, it's an upgrade. Come on." I think the NFL's kind of stepped in on some of that. When it comes to that, obviously Whitt got the elevation being the defensive coordinator, and I think for the Cowboys, right, whoever they hire is probably going to say whether Harris is here or not. But Harris is beloved in the DFW area, media-wise, and with the coach or with the players as well too.
Yeah, that's the thinking about it the last couple of days. That's why I kind of think that's when we see a move with Harris or not to see. I mean, maybe that's what we're waiting for, to see who you all
Right.
do hire, to
Mm-hmm.
see if he's going to be on their staff. If they're just
Mm-hmm.
release him, then we can just sign him as a DB coach.
Right.
If not, try to make that play to either give him some type of passing or run game coordinator or assistant defensive coordinator or something like
Right.
that, to try to get him over here. Because I doubt if Jerry give permission for a lateral remove, right? I mean, you never know.
Not straight up. Not
You know?
straight up. But here's what will happen. Like right now, no. But as soon as they hire Zimmer or Ron Rivera or insert me, maybe, I don't know. But as soon as they hire someone, I'm sure that said person will have the leeway to bring in what they want on the staff. I do think Zimmer's probably going to be it'll be interesting, because I think Zimmer's is probably going to be the guy. And, we have Sharif Floyd, former player for them, on the staff already. I do think Durde, the defensive line coach, who did some interviewing, is a little bit of a dark horse. But, yeah, we'll wait and see, man.
All right. So we have a lot of well, not a lot, but we have some young players. You mentioned them earlier. Emmanuel Forbes, Jamin Davis. We got Quan Martin. We got Defoe. Cam, which I think he can take Cam to a whole another level, because a lot of times your talent can only take you so far, depending who you are. And if you don't have great coaching to be able to get you off of that wall, you'll just be stuck on that side for the rest of your career. And that's where I think especially Cam is right now. But I think he can get, I think he has a short wall, and some coaching like Whitt and like DQ can kind of take him over that wall. But how do you think he's going to approach those players, the younger players that was drafted high, a lot of expectations, they have not met those expectations? How do you think he gets them to get to that next level?
Yeah, you have to come in and immediately reestablish their confidence.
Yeah.
And I think that's coming in and saying, hey, we're not worried about what was here before y'all. We're not worried about that. We understand who you are. And look, if Forbes was the guy that was high on our board, and see Dan Quinn go right to that. Oh, I wanted you. Believe that. I wanted you, and immediately it gets those things kind of moving and going for them to go. So I think it's just really, it's the building blocks right away, letting them guys know, hey, look, whatever happened. We know who you are. We scouted you. We did this. This is what we think about you, and get them on board with the plan. Now one thing I will say, Cameron Curl, you brought up there. I mean, Dan Quinn likes to use safety as a linebacker, so I hope he's ready.
Yeah, now he did. Like he played at least 5 positions since he's been here. He's played Mike, he's played Will, safeties, free, strong.
To me,
slot.
when I look at him, and I think I might have told DT this, or maybe it was Caleb, I can't remember. But go look how he used Donovan Wilson, and I think that's exactly what you're going to see with Cameron Curl.
Okay, that's
exactly what I think. Donovan did a little bit of everything, slot blitzing, everything. How he used Donovan Wilson, I think exactly how they're going to use Cameron Curl for sure.
All right, Whitt. I didn't really know anything about Whitt. Of course, we know Al Harris because he's very active on the sidelines, former player, got the dreads, all that good stuff. So we know exactly who he is. And then they say Joe Wicks. We're like, man, who is this? We want Al Harris as a D coordinator. So now I got to figure out who this guy is. But it seems like he was like it was Quinn, him, and then Al Harris. So just tell us a little bit about Whitt, because he has a ton of experience, right? I mean, he coached Al Harris. I mean, that's how much experience he has. Yeah, he's been around a while. So tell us, a little bit about Whitt.
Yeah, Whitt's about business. Look, demeanor, very, very straightforward, straight-laced. Again, he kind of said it best. Ferris said a little bit. They're kind of one and the same. They kind of mirror each other to a certain extent. Now, I think obviously there's more opportunity for Quinn to speak because of the position he was in. Now we'll get to see Whitt, obviously being the defensive coordinator, he'll have more opportunity in front of the camera to kind of talk and do things. But again, teacher, and that's where they're really tied to the hip at, is their style of coaching is very similar. That's another reason why he probably chose to move forward as well too. Again, very special in the secondary, as I mentioned earlier. You can go down up. Charles Woodson all the time talks about, whenever he made the transition, Joe Whitt was instrumental in him going from corner to safety. You look at the Al Harrison, how he played, right? And that was Joe Whitt on top of some of that and what they did for them. And then even the time that he spent in Atlanta, look, there was DBs down there that got built while he was there. Yeah, there's some injuries, some different things that happened with the Kazis of the world or the Count O'Neills of the world, but They had guys consistently in the secondary. That's the bread and butter. That's what they're able to do very well. Joe Whitt is very good at that. He's a no nonsense kind of guy, but not in the rah kind of way, right? Like, he's not going to be a guy that's going to be popping the blood vessel, and screaming. That's not really who he is. But he's matter of fact, and like, hey, we got a job to do. But their coaching philosophy and everything, and right, you want that kind of, consistency within the building when you build a coaching staff of. They're going to be on the same tone. They're tied at the hip in that way, so the messaging is going to be the same. Unlike if Dan Quinn was there, right? Let's say they went and got a young guy, right? A young buck down there. Maybe he's not related to the side. Okay, Dan Quinn's coming on top of him, a la McCarthy and Kellen Moore for us on the offensive side. It's already built in place there. It's already built in place for that defensive scheme to get across the board and learn the right ways. And, like I said, Quinn's going to support Whitt because he trusts him. The trust factor is already there. He doesn't have to worry about trusting him to do an unknown quantity or entity coming in. And Whitt understands exactly what Quinn wants to get to and what he's going to be able to do. So I just think it's a win-win in that realm. Again, I don't think he'll be running the bleachers like a Dan Quinn will before every game, or big the hat backwards all the time. A little bit like I said, Quinn got a little swag to him. Joey don't have a whole lot of swag. Okay, Quinn got a little swag to him. So, but from the coaching and what really matters, they're teachers, man, and they kind of share the same brain when it comes to the defensive side of the ball.
Oh, that's good to hear. Let me see. Yeah, Cam, what's up, Chuck? I definitely think Cam is gonna re-sign Dev. He's not gonna be here, but I was always on the point where I think I was kind of like 50-50 if he would resign, but getting Dan Quinn in here, I think is more of a 90% chance we resign Cam Curl. That's the only thing I didn't like is he played off too much bail, especially this year. Guess that's with the backs. So you know our defense, Knicks. What do you think? What do you think Dan Quinn is going to want to add immediately to this defense?
Probably safeties. He likes to roll safeties. He likes to have them in the box. He wants to play big nickel. To me, Jayron Kearse is going to be a free agent. I think that's I'd be shocked if he doesn't end up in Washington. You know what I mean? I would be shocked because
who is that?
The guy in there, Jayron Kearse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me pull this up. And Kim says she like your welcome-ish sign.
Oh yeah.
There we go.
Right. So again, Jayron Kearse, he knows the scheme. He knows what they're trying to get to. He understands. He's been a green dot guy as well for this defense. So I don't think. Look, we extended Hooker. We extended or new contract, I should say. Not Hooker. A new contract with Hooker 2 years ago. New contract for Wilson last year. Last year for Jayron after getting another deal from us for 2 years. So. To me, I think absolutely Jayron Kearse is out of the building for us. I think it just makes way too much sense for him not to land over there in Washington and help get that defense turned around and get it off the ground.
What do you think his number is going to be? Think it's going to be a high, middle, low?
No, I mean the last contract, what was it? 2 years, like $9 million, I think.
Okay. Wasn't how old is he, Knicks?
He's got to be right around 30 now. Okay. Right around 30.
Okay.
Somewhere in that.
We do need
like 28, 29, 30, somewhere around in there, I believe.
Yeah, depending on what they do with Fuller, we real young back there. I mean, we real young. Even some people was talking about Stephon Gilmore, just to add that vet presence. What about Dorance Armstrong? I know DT was asking about him.
Dorance would be the other guy I would look at because I don't think he's going to be a guy that gets brought back to Dallas. Obviously knows the scheme. Now there were some conversations this offseason with him, right? You know what I'm saying? You're welcome, Kim. In that pass rush, look, he was number 2 on our team in defensive sacks this year, 7.5. Obviously, and he can't get after the quarterback. Setting the edge isn't always his thing, though. And there was some contract talks prior to the season. There was some other talks of, hey, you need to do this better, so on and so forth. And there was a little bit of a stalemate for a while, a little little bit of a cold war, if you were, prior to training camp, when some of that stuff kind of got brought up behind the scenes and those talks between the coaching staff and him in that realm. But again, he's a guy comes in, knows the system, and automatically gets you pass rush. Like, he can do that for you. On the right side, was he 25 or 26? Excuse me. So, yeah, those are the two guys I look at our list that I could say could end up in Washington. I believe Kearse more than anybody, but if I ranked him over, I'd be Kearse, Armstrong, and I mean Gilmore maybe, but man, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where Gilmore's at. I don't know exactly, how that's gonna roll. So, but yeah, those two there are the two off the list that I can say, yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
And we know the NFL is moving to a more, we're gonna call it nickel look, just to cover all generations of football. That nickel look, is that pretty much what you all are in the majority of the time, or is more so first quarter here, first, second down here? Like, what's the normal base defense?
Yeah, 4-2-5, and really kind of a 4-2-6 when we talk about Marquise Bell last year playing linebacker for us, right? But that's really where it's at. Now they do things within the front, odd alignments, and different units. Like, they like to rotate the line a lot. They like to have a plethora of guys when it comes to the defensive line to be able to rotate in and out. Okay. But big nickel is what they kind of hung there, at least here in Dallas. Out of the gate. I mean, even we go back to the first year he was here, and this is why I say another reason why I think Kearse is going over there. First year here, who'd he go sign for Dallas? Keanu Neal, who was safety, then linebacker in Atlanta, came over here, did some linebacker stuff for us. So yeah, I think those are what you would look at. So get used to seeing the 3 safety look in your nickel.
Yeah, we've been doing that a lot these last 2 years.
Yeah. But it'll be different because of how they drop and come down.
Well, I hope it's different.
Yeah. Because y'all, even though y'all were doing that, y'all don't think y'all were doing a lot of single high safety stuff though, were y'all?
No,
so y'all went into the quarters and different things like that. Yeah. So that's really the rotation you're going to see. You're going to see a lot of 3 quarters. You're going to see a lot of single safety, especially typically in the man fronts and whatnot. You will see the safeties drop. You'll see 2 safeties come down, and then you'll see 1 go in, go out. So again, big nickel is what I would anticipate that they're going to do. Obviously, Joe Whitt has a little bit different time in this league with the Don Capers of the world. So what kind of spin does he want to put on to the defense that he's been a part of with Dan Quinn since Atlanta through Dallas, but out of the gate, right, to be looking at what they've done here in Dallas. Big nickel, a single high safety, quarters coverage, 3 stuff like that is what you're going to see from them.
George, we just went over that, George. Nix was telling us possible Jayron Kearse is probably
Jayron Kearse and Dorance Armstrong.
Yeah, he's probably a definite. He likes safeties, as Nick says. So look for him for sure. He's a little older, between 28 and 30. We're definitely going to look at him. It seems like he kind of plays that Cam Curl role a little bit. So I was at 90% Knicks, but I ain't sure now. So I got.
Well, here's the thing. But he only plays in the box and covers tight ends. That's basically what he does when it comes to Kearse. So he's not playing like Curl. You talked about kind of moving a little bit everywhere and stuff. That's not his game. He's an in the box guy, and he in tight ends. That's kind of what he does. And what's interesting about him was, so we signed him that 1 year. Boom, he comes in place. Has a phenomenal year, and then free agency comes. And nobody wanted to pick up the phone because most of the people around the league said, well, he works in that defense in the big nickel, but we're not running the same style. So that's how he ended up back in Dallas on the 2-year deal. So to me, I don't think, because we've already signed the other 2 guys with a new D coordinator coming in here, that's why I think he's going to leave. And look, when we just spun the block 2 years ago, nobody was like, no, he works in Dan Quinn's defense. Well, where's Dan Quinn now? Right? And it's going to be a low buy-in on him anyway. So and he's a guy that can help facilitate, be the green dot, do those things. So I don't think that's going to hurt you from getting Curl, because he's got to have more than just 2, but it gives him them options. Because like I said, I think Curl's more like Donovan Wilson. And we saw a ton of Kearse and Donovan Wilson on the field. And you can get to those things with Kearse and Curl as well, too.
Okay. Outside of Al Harris, is there anybody else on the defensive side or the offensive side? I mean, I don't think so. I think Peters is kind of more involved on the offensive side of coaches in a sense, but is there anyone on the defensive side that he will? Because we did interview the passing game coordinator with the Raiders yesterday. I'm not sure for what role, but they did give us permissions to interview him. But is there anyone else on that defense that you think he may want to bring over?
Yeah, I mean, look, I would say, look, Al Harris and Durde, who's the offensive line or defensive line coach, I'm sure those guys that are on their radar, simply put. And Durde actually got some other interviews prior to all this outside of the building. I think it's just a wait and see for them. Depending on who Dallas hires, what they want to do with who's left on the staff, and move on from there. But I think for sure if Durde and Al Harris are out of the building, it wouldn't shock me if they both landed over there in Washington.
Yeah. Trevor's like, what type of an impact? And this matters too, like the impact. As we can see, you have Mike, and it's like when we opened the show up and you was talking about, Mike McCarthy. That was kind of like something that we was discussing a couple of weeks ago or a week ago about Al Harris and Whitt and those guys. Is McCarthy has kind of been, especially from outside looking in, always on the hot seat. I mean, it's Dallas, like always on the hot seat. So they have to really look at the situation and say, hey, do I want to go ahead and stay here? Right. When he could possibly be fired and looking for another job, or I want to go with my mans and them that just got probably a fresh five. But what's the impact of losing Quinn and Whitt, like pretty much the same weekend?
Yeah, I mean, you look at a defense that, for the first time since the 70s and the previous 2 years, led the league in turnovers and had 30-plus turnovers. Hadn't happened since the Steel Curtain in the 70s. You know what I'm saying?
Goodness.
And then, I'm sure we'll especially because, look, I mean, we're a team that went for a very long time. We just didn't create turnovers. We get you sacks. We couldn't create turnovers. And like, oh, my God, here's a turnover, in those realms. But, the last season, right, that's the indifferent part, right? And I spoke about this when it came to, Dan Quinn and Mike McCarthy. Is always about McCarthy. That's the head coach, right? That who gets it.
Most definitely.
We were the second most penalized defense in the league. And for dumb stuff, not always just holding or face masks, like lining up off sides, jumping off sides, a key in impromptu times, right? And you would say that's on the coaching staff, right? About
that's on Quinn.
Do your thing. That's on Quinn. And then of course a little bit of the stubbornness of staying in the big nickel packages against 12 and 13 personnel. Just caught up to him this year. But the impact, obviously, like you see the players that they've developed over here, and a piece of them getting into getting these players into the system, who they wanted to draft and kind of get there. I think it. I mean, it's impactful, right? And you got to bring a guy in here, and as you were talking about, how does he get the young guys on board over there? And we talk about the building blocks. Got the same kind of thing over here as well too. Hey, he's out of the building now. Most of these guys on the defense, for the most part, came up with Quinn. So now it's a new voice. It's somebody different. How do they get those guys to get into their system as well too? So. It's impactful. It's an intriguing time, and it's in some of this is from our front office of, McCarthy being on this last year of his deal, and hey, go prove it, and we'll see where you are. It was very impactful for the Cowboys to lose Quinn and Whitt, no matter how some of the things kind of broke down and went this season.
Yeah. So before we get out of here, Nix, Dan Quinn. How do you think he's going to approach this opportunity? He talked about, him learning and doing these, but we won't be able to know that until when it comes to the pressure. It just seems like when he was a head coach in Atlanta, when the pressure started building up, they say he started getting a little sporadic. Have you seen any of that with him in Dallas, especially over this last year?
No, like I said, I just think the only thing that happened here the last season in Dallas was just a little late to adjust at times because, like I said, we saw the Buffalo game and how that went. Well, then you go the next two, which was Miami, and it was the Lions. He adjusted then because Miami didn't score a ton of points, right? Didn't run the ball and gash us. Detroit didn't score a ton of points, run the ball, gash us. Now, I know the Green Bay game is a Green Bay game. I'll skip over our Week 18 game. That didn't really matter. So I'll leave that one out there. Now, I know y'all didn't let me skip over the Week 18 game 2 years ago, but I want to skip over it for this time and purposes, okay? But yeah, and then that happened. But that was, again, being stubborn in, hey, I'm not going to match up, and I get it. You didn't have all the bullets in the clip, maybe because of what was that linebacker and different things, but man, you got to kind of try to match up some, and it just didn't happen. And like I said, 2 out of the last 5 games really hurt him in that realm. So, but no, he never. I mean, he wasn't sweating. He wasn't sporadic. The only thing that happened sporadically was we didn't really understand the gameplay, or the game plan against Green Bay. But again, if we kind of go back to the injury to the shoulder, and maybe you didn't feel like you could play as much man, and you didn't want to put that pressure on him. Maybe that's some of it that happened. The only conundrum for me throughout the entirety time that he was here, period, was the very last game. As far as lining up, playing, doing what they do. And that was the first time I saw him kind of not really stick to the guns and be who they are to a certain extent from a gameplay. But outside of that, model consistency, the win, lose, or draw stayed after it. Maybe a little bit more discipline from the penalty stuff. But, I mean, I don't know. I always argue this too. Pre-snap penalties, man, you're a professional football player. Don't line up off sides. I don't know how you instill someone to not line up off sides. You know what I'm saying? Now, if it's technique and stuff like that, sure, I believe discipline coaching, you got to do certain things there. But, I mean, it's water underneath the bridge now as it comes to that. So, no, as far as the Atlanta, maybe things got a little haywire point towards the end. I didn't see that here. But, of course, he'd have to answer for everything. He just had to worry about the defense. Now, here's the different light now being the head coach. But I think the light doesn't shine any brighter than anywhere in the NFL world than the Dallas Cowboys. It's nonstop, 24/7. You got San Francisco fans out here in Vegas talking about Dallas sucks. I mean, we just kind of know what it is. You know what I'm saying? We understand what it is. And look, but that's not just from us viewing it through a social media scope or talking to big letter networks and stuff like that. That happens in real time at the Star in Frisco. So I mean, so there's no ifs, ands, or buts in the last 3 years of him. The light shined. It's not going to shine nearly as hard for him early on up there because new spot, new ownership for y'all, where that's going. You're about to get a new quarterback in the building. That buys you time. That buys you a set of time. But what I loved what he said earlier was it is about now. It's not about the future. And I think from that standpoint, I think that was something that he took not from Dallas. I think he took that from Atlanta. Understanding I'm a head coach and the clock is here. The clock is here. I don't have a long time. I need to make sure we are doing things now today that are about today. And I think listening to that interview from him, to me, and the things that he spoke about, very much so said, this is what I've learned from the time I was fired in Atlanta, my time in Atlanta as a head coach, through Dallas to here, that he understands it is about now where this fan base is, where this organization is, and he's got to roll up the sleeves and get to work. It's not about, we're going to draft, and we're going to do this, and we're going to get for the future, we're going to build. He's trying to make an impact sooner than later. And some of that is coming into one of the worst defenses in history, and see what he did in Dallas. Yeah. Seeing taking the Atlanta team to a Super Bowl, understanding what went wrong there, understanding maybe some missteps here and there in Dallas, but overall good. He just understands now going back into that role of a head coach. He understands nobody wants to hear him say, well, we're building for the future. They don't want to hear
he didn't say that. He said you will not ever hear me say rebuild. Right. So he said recalibrate. Because,
And I think but to the question, I think that's what he's learned though from his time from going through in Atlanta and everything else. He understands, no. We ain't rebuild. We here. Right now. Look, hold on.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. And there's no excuse. He didn't give himself an excuse to use at this time next year. Right? He didn't say, look, I asked for a 2-3 year process. No, that's not he's putting all of that on his shoulders right now. To be competitive straight out the gate. And I like that. I like him taking that on his shoulders. I like him using that. Have him own up to it. No, this is not a 2-3 year process. We are here right now. Before we get out of here, Ken wants to know, do you think it'd be hard for him to step away from calling plays?
Yes. I think every play caller is hard. Period. And he trusts Quinn. I mean, he trusts Joe Whitt for sure. But he gave it up in Atlanta. And then he kind of, the coach wanted to kind of not, the owner didn't want him to be doing all that. Then towards the end, what was he doing? He was calling the plays. So yeah, I think inherently, sure, it's hard to give up play calling because that's how you got to where you are, right? So it's like for me or you, right? So let's say we're doing a particular job, and you know what, we get to a new position that pays us more. We have more responsibility. But the one thing that we did to get us to this promotion, well, you don't do that though. You do everything else, but you don't do what you really got you here. It's hard to let it go. So I think it's important to him getting Joe Whitt there because I think that's a guy that he trusts. Like I said, they share the same brain in a lot of ways, and I think that helps. But I do think, I think inherently nothing that's going to be like, oh, my God, he's going to be gritting his teeth, and I'm not calling. I wish you wouldn't call that. I don't think it's like that. But, no, I think it's hard. I think offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, when you go to a head coach and you're not calling plays, I think that's hard. I think it's hard for you.
Yeah, for sure. So Telly and I, we live in DC, not the DMV, DC.
Right.
And we have the understanding that it doesn't matter about our record. It doesn't matter if we're good or not. Dallas is always going to be a rivalry and most hated. Always. It's different outside the DMV. That's why I tell people, outside of the DMV, like Cowboys don't care about us. Like, that I mean, you do. I know you do because I understand yours goes from the 80s, right? But like the new age, like in the media, like they don't care about our rivalry, right? But the older Cowboy fans do, and we do being in the city. Even the younger Redskins, Commander fans in the city they hate Dallas because Dallas is all around us. And for all types of reasons, the first black person, all that good stuff, right? So, bad stuff, but you know what I mean.
I know.
So, so do you think this thing right here with that part that understands the rivalry? Do you think this move right here revs it up a little bit more about us hiring, like taking Dan Quinn and Whitt and possibly Harris?
I mean, it puts more juice on it, right? I mean, it has to put more juice on it. Like, there's no way fans are buzz. There's a little extra sauce on the dog, you know what I mean? On the glizzy, a little extra sauce on the glizzy. So, no, it puts a little extra there. I mean, look, all your ramped up for it anyways. You know what I'm saying? Period, point blank. But, yeah, there's a little, right? I mean, come on. Not even just, here's the thing about it, right? Because we see these players sometimes don't take the rivalry as serious and different things like that. Oh, when we line up, Parsons and them and Quinn's going to want to give it some. There's going to be a little extra. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
That's why I hope the matchup is much earlier than later because I don't want things to go left or right.
I want week 3.
I want them in there. That's week 1. Come on now.
Nah, I want week 3. I gotta get the kinks out, because I gotta get Caleb some playing time. Let me get Caleb some playing time. First couple games.
You gonna trade up for one for Caleb? That what it said? You're gonna trade it for one for Caleb?
I don't know, man. It's just like I would trade up.
You got Cliff.
I mean, most definitely. I would definitely trade up, but I don't want to give up a first next year. Like for me, I don't think he's generational, and I don't think he is that much better than the next 2 guys. So I don't want to give up a haul. Like some people will get up 2 firsts and a pick swap. I'm not there yet, but I wouldn't mind giving up, a second or both of our seconds that we have, a third, something like that. But I don't want to give up a first next year. Now, if it's just a first next year and that's it, or first and a third or something like that, maybe. But that's just where right now. And then I can change, I can change, but I just don't see. Like I'm okay with all 3 of them. I think all 3 of them can run Cliff's system, and to a certain point, they all have ran some type of variation of it. So that's kind of where I am with Caleb. But yeah, I definitely want Caleb. He's definitely my QB1 for sure.
Well, I hope they believe you, and they don't want to spend all the capital to go up and get him. And Caleb's not here, so I appreciate you. I'm pulling for you. And not to trade the assets. I'm with you.
Y'all gonna be the reason why I switch up and just sell the whole farm. Look, you don't want and for me, you don't want to miss out. If he is generational, if he is the next,
you're right there.
You just got to do it. If you feel like if they do decide to do it, I'm all whatever they decide to do. Right. I'm all in for sure.
10-4. Sure. Hey man, he's right there, and you can taste it. It's right there.
Yep.
Hey, man, you better go do what you got to do. I hope y'all don't.
I bet you do. I bet you don't.
Trade back. You know what? Not just trade back. The only word I'm picking number 2 is trade back. Get some more assets. There you go.
Oh man, but that's why I'm doing this, and I ain't in that building, right?
Mm-hmm.
So don't listen to me, Adam.
No, definitely listen to him. He's on to something. He's thinking right now.
Oh man, CJ, yeah, we did talk about Dorance Armstrong a little while back about some free agents that they have. We just check it and run it back. But Nix, I definitely appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
Please shoot out your podcast and where you are. And we're actually under the same one of our projects is under the same streaming service. So go ahead and shout all that out.
Yeah, man. So you can catch me on all social medias at your_guy_Nix, Nix. Twitter. I'm trying to do Instagram. I hate Instagram's interface, man. But I'm trying. But all that. Also, our joint thing, man. If y'all haven't yet, man, it's a really cool experience. It's called the Pro Sports Fan app. PSF. Just man, go over there, download it, jump in there, man. They got all sports, individual teams, college, hockey, football, and man, we do content over there on a weekly basis, and also during games, there's live stream of the games and all kinds of stuff. There's gonna be some other things coming. There's gonna be live betting coming in. That's gonna be installed in that. There's a lot of things that are coming on the back end. Shout out to Sean Salisbury, our president. Man, he's been really cool in supporting and doing things. If you don't know, former NFL quarterback, go check him out. And then, of course, over there on YouTube, Pick 6 Sports. Pick the number 6 Sports. Me, Mariella, Spoonie, Professor O, and Don, man. We got a lot of draft content coming y'all's way. Actually, my guy Don was actually down there at the Senior Bowl. We actually did some live updates from the Senior Bowl last week. So, yeah, we're excited and ramped up and jazzed up for this playoff. I mean, I would be if we were still in the playoffs. But, so, for this draft season.
Definitely appreciate you, Marcus. Marcus say we gonna beat y'all cowgirls.
Hey, y'all say that every year.
But that was it was another word in front of cowgirls, but I don't want to mess up my algorithm.
That's fine.
Mitch, definitely appreciate
you. The funny thing is, for 2 years in a row, I'll do a NFC East, state of the NFC East space before the season starts. 2 years ago, I told Washington Commanders fans, man, I think y'all gonna go 10-7. Man, I got called everything but a child of God. And then when it went left, I couldn't find nobody. Some of y'all turned into Chargers fans. I know who you are, but I ain't gonna say no names. Then last year I did it. I had Caleb telling me Thanksgiving's gonna be bad for you, that turkey, this, that, and the third. Then I can't find it. I'm glad y'all keep the same energy though. Hey, this is what makes the rivalry fun, man.
Yeah, man. Most definitely, man. Like that turkey leg thing, man. Like I didn't like when I was watching that guy. I was cool. I was like, yeah, this is we whatever. You know what I'm saying? We looking to the future. When they went in that Salvation Army thing, man, I was so hurt. I had to stand up. I was like, this is not happening.
Nasty work. Yeah, it was nasty work.
This is not happening. I cannot believe. So yeah, y'all definitely on our radar, man. Like hopefully, like I've been asking for Del Rio and them to blitz Jamin at least 12 times a game. So hopefully, especially that game, I'm definitely gonna tell DQ I need Jamin to blitz at least 12 15 times both of those games against you. But again, definitely appreciate you. I appreciate all of you out there for watching. Appreciate you for listening. We know your time is very valuable. For you to spend it with us, we definitely appreciate it. Remember, do it because you love it, not because it loves you. One beat, one sound, one heart, one love.